the founders of the United States. We put them on our money, we make statues for them, we build entire museums, and we pretend that they were somehow superhuman. They weren't. They were stubborn. They were petty. They were flawed men living out real leadership principles when the cost was their actual lives. I've actually been in Philadelphia for the last 2 weeks, just a couple of blocks from where the Declaration of Independence was actually signed. And I can't stop thinking about how everything I believe about how leaders rise or fall, these men lived it 250 years ago under stakes that, let's be honest, you and I will probably never face. And listen, they didn't succeed because they were somehow super geniuses. They succeeded because they lived true leadership principles that are just as relevant today as they were back then, if not more so. So listen, this isn't a history lesson. I'm not going to lecture you about 1776. I just want to walk you through how flawed men under real stakes lived the same truths that you're being asked to live as a leader in your own business or your family right now. Let me show you what I mean. So let's start with George Washington. There was no law stopping him from a third term. No term limits existed at that time. And the country would have just handed it to him. There were actually people that wanted him for life. They wanted him to basically be their king. And he said no. And then he went home to his farm. Think about that for a second. The one man that everybody agreed the country couldn't do without was the same one that decided the country couldn't afford to need him forever. Because here's the thing about being needed. It feels good. It feels like proof that you matter. And it's the most flattering cage you'll ever encounter. Listen, most of us probably would have stayed if we were in the same situation. And not necessarily because we're power hungry, but because staying would have felt responsible. Everything would have continued to run smoothly. Don't rock the boat. Maybe we would have good intentions. But Washington, he wasn't asking what felt right for him. He was asking what a forever president does to a country 50 years after he's gone. And he let that answer outweigh his own comfort. So let me ask you, that decision that you keep avoiding or you keep on your own desk because it makes you feel needed, you're not protecting your team. You're building a team that can't move forward without you. Being needed, not the same thing as leading. Now, the one that every leader needs to hear, even if they don't want to, myself included. So we tell the story of the Declaration like one brilliant man sat down with a pen and history just poured out of him onto the parchment. That was Jefferson, alone, the author, the genius. That's not what happened, and we all know it. Congress actually put him on a committee of 5. Yeah, Jefferson is the one that actually physically wrote the document. But Adams was in the room. Franklin was in the room. And then the whole Congress got their hands on it. And they argued over it. They struck entire passages. They supposedly cut about a quarter of what Jefferson wrote, including a section that he really deeply cared about. And Jefferson sat there and watched them tear apart the most important words he would ever write in his life. By his own account, he was miserable the whole time. The single most famous document that we have in our country, the thing our whole nation was built on, was a shared mission that barely survived a room full of people editing it. So here's what I want to ask you. I want you to actually look at. You think you're behind. You're not. You're unsupported. Those are two completely different problems. And you've probably been treating one like it's the other. Listen, here's the truth. Unsupported strength, it doesn't look heroic from the outside. It looks like burnout. It looks like a leader who's the bottleneck in every single process and system, and they call it dedication. Listen, the people that you admire most, they don't do it alone. They have coaches, they have guides, they have mentors, they have a partner who tells them no. They have a full room of other imperfect people who keep sharpening the mission until it can stand on its own. There's a line in the Bible that I think about a lot. Where there's no guidance, the people fall. But in the abundance of counselors, there's victory. So let me ask you something. What have you been calling strength? It's actually just isolation. Who have you refused to let in? And what is it costing you to keep proving that you can carry everything by yourself? Okay, let's switch gears a little because it's the 4th of July, and I don't want you to leave picturing a bunch of grim marble statues. Listen, the founders were a mess. It was a full-blown soap opera. I mean, Adams and Jefferson, they built a country together, and then they stopped speaking for years after a brutal election. Two of the sharpest minds in history sulking like a couple of teenagers. Then they got old. Adams was the one that finally caved, and he sends a letter to Jefferson. And then they sent letters back and forth for the next 14 years like nothing had ever happened. And then, I still can't get over this one, they both died on the same day. July 4th, 1826. 50 years to the day after the signing of the Declaration. Here's the funny part. Adams was the last to die, and his reported last words were, "Jefferson survives." He had no idea that Jefferson had actually died a few hours earlier. The man was keeping score down to his last breath. And don't even get me started on Benjamin Franklin and all of his jokes that he supposedly said. You know, we all know that famous line from the signing, right? We must all hang together or we'll all hang separately. Who knows how many of the quotes that we attribute to Benjamin Franklin were actually said by him? Supposedly he was cracking jokes at the Constitutional Convention, which was supposed to be the solemn occasion. Listen, here's the point. These men were stubborn. They were petty. They were vain. They were constantly at each other's throats. And they still built one of the most successful things in human history. So next time you feel like you have to be some kind of polished, perfect, composed leader, think again. That leader doesn't exist and never did. Stop overthinking. Just lead messy. Listen, I want to get honest with you for just a minute because I haven't told you the real reason I'm in Philadelphia this week. I'm not here as a tourist. I'm here for my son. He's 11 and he's in treatment for cancer. That's why we're here in Philadelphia. We didn't come here for the history. But here's what keeps sticking with me. I'm here the week of the 4th of July, a few blocks from the room where they tell Washington's story. The story about building something that doesn't need your grip to keep standing. I don't think that's a coincidence. The Bible says the mind of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. This season, it stripped a lot away from me. I'm going to be honest. And it taught me something that I don't think I could have learned any other way. When you cannot be the one holding everything, you find out real fast what actually needs you and what you've truly built. And listen, I'm not telling you this to feel sorry for me. This is not a sad story. It's a story of clarity for me. And I hope for you, because it costs to build something that matters. And listen, I would not trade what it's teaching me for anything. So let me pull this together. Washington shows you how to walk away from what only needs you. Your circle shows you how to stop carrying it all alone. The mess shows you how to drop the polished statue act. And the season that you're standing in teaches you that your steps are ordered, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. But here's the thing I really want you to hear. None of this great American experiment worked because these men were superhuman, because they were great. It worked because they held on to truth. And that's the part that we forget on the 4th, I think. These men signed a document because they believed in what they were doing. They signed something that was basically their own death warrant. The freedom you and I inherited was not free. And the freedom you're trying to build right now for your family, for your team, for yourself, that won't be free either. It's going to cost you the comfort of being needed. It's going to cost you the ego of doing it all alone. And it's going to cost you the polished image that you've been protecting. Pay it. It's worth it. Happy 4th of July. Go build something that outlives your grip on it.